Ooh, what's going on, guys? I'm here with Greg Gabriel. I think it's going to be a great day. A lot of stuff going on when it comes to Bears coaching rumors, stuff swirling around, names flying around, a lot of narratives and crazy stuff. And that's why I'm glad to be talking to Greg Gabriel today. This is a guy who's been in the room, been there when we've hired a head coach before. He knows what goes into it. He knows a lot of the BS and how to tell what's what when it's going on. How's it going, Greg?
It's going wonderful, except my fingers get sore from all the typing I got to do on my phone with people that really don't understand anything. And I'm trying
Spending too much time on Twitter.
I know, but it's, they think they got all the answers and they really don't have a clue. And the latest is being, this morning's article in ESPN that Courtney Cronin, who's a very good writer, was pushing. She did not write the article, about the control agents have in coaching hires and stuff. But here's the fact, and some of it's brought out. The agent business, as it applies to coaches and front office personnel, is a complete 180 as compared to the agent business for players.
Okay.
There's hundreds and hundreds of player agents out there.
Okay.
There's a freaking handful of coaching and front office agents. And why is there that? Because they're damn good at what they do. And the coaches go to them. Will you represent me? Because they know they got connections. They'll get them in the building for an interview and they'll negotiate a good contract. Okay. It's not a real profitable business unless you got some big names. So the only way this thing is going to change is all of a sudden, you get a bunch of agents come in and say, okay, I'm going to get into the coaching business. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's say I wanted to do that. Could I call up Andy Reid and say, I want to represent you? And here's why. No, he's got Bob Lamont. Why is he going to change to me? Bob Lamont, who for the longest time was the king of the coaching agents in the NFL. Jimmy Sexton is the king of college football.
Yep.
And it's, it's just hard to, build a clientele. So what the young guy's going to do, or the new guy's going to do, is he's going to go out and he's going to get some young assistant coaches, try to do good by them. They might be college coaches who have aspirations to be pro coaches or whatever, but none of them are head coach type things. They're all assistant coaches. And you grow as they grow. But reality is, say 6 or 7 of these guys came along this year. It's 10 years before they're putting a dent in the business.
Okay. So I'm imagining, I didn't see this article. I'm imagining this has something to do with along the lines of how Eberflus and Ryan Poles shared the same agent. They got Trace Armstrong and people.
And here's the thing, what people don't understand. This happens all over the National Football League. It's not a Chicago Bear thing. Go to Kansas City. I mentioned Andy Reid, Bob Lamont. Guess who else Bob Lamont is there? Brett Veach, the general manager. Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, and most of the coaching staff. This happens all over the league.
Yeah, that's tough.
Part of it is it makes it easier sometimes to do business, especially if you've got your coaching staff in place and you want to keep a guy. It's a lot easier to keep him if the head coach has got the same agent as the assistant coach.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people making a big fuss about how Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus had the same agent. I will say one thing that's been dismissed in that I don't hear a lot of people talking about when they're hating on Ryan Poles for the Flus hiring is we already had our coaching search narrowed down to the final 3 when Ryan Poles was hired.
Yeah, good thing you brought that up because it's people say, well, Poles chose Eberflus. No, he didn't. Bill Polian chose Eberflus.
Yeah.
Just look at the frickin' timeline.
I've talked about that before.
They spent weeks interviewing prospective coaches and prospective general managers. Okay, then they got to some finalists for the GM job, hired Ryan Poles. If what we hear is true, Ryan had an opportunity to go to Minnesota, chose here.
Okay.
2 days later, I think the dates were the 27th and 29th of January. It might have been 25th and 27th, but it was 48 hours.
A couple days apart, yeah.
Yeah, just 48 hours. Poles is hired on the 27th, and on the 29th, Eberflus is hired. Now, you're going to tell me a brand new general manager is going to do all the due diligence and work involved to hire a head coach in really what amounts to be 24 hours because you've got to negotiate a contract, and that takes time.
Yeah, that's something I've talked about that a lot, and that's the point I didn't even really bring up was it was done 48 hours later. Like, there's no chance unless Ryan Poles what Ryan Poles tried to, his play on it was, I
already knew him. I had a relationship with him.
I've been researching for next head coaches and kind of preparing for this, but no, it's not the same. You didn't even know what team you were going to be working with. So there's a lot of stuff that's just a little different there. But I think,
was I in the room? No.
Yeah.
But, I know what happened with Ernie, of course. Ernie's, when he was involved with Ryan Pace and John Fox, I worked with Ernie, of course, for a number of years in New York. He was my general manager for a number of years. We're good friends. And it was, Ryan Pace had the choice, but was told that's the guy you should hire.
Poles. Poles. I think you said Pace there.
No, I did say Pace. This is going back because Pace was dealing with Ernie Accorsi and with John Fox.
Okay, with John Fox.
Okay, so he that's the guy, and of course he had a relationship with Fox. Fox was the last staff I was on in New York. Sean Payton was the offensive coordinator. Jim Fossil was the head coach. Of course, he was general manager, and Fox was the defensive coordinator. I mean,
man, that's a stacked room right there.
So it was, we had, or that better way of saying it, there was relationships already there. Mm-hmm. I remember when John and Denver got divorced because he really didn't get fired. It was really a mutual agreement between him and Elway.
Yep.
I was in Buffalo visiting my kids, and I had been doing work for the Score there. I called the Score. I go, put me on if you want, but I'm going to tell you right now, John Fox is going to be the head coach. Well, how do you know that? I said, because him and Ernie, of course, you're real close. Mm-hmm. And guess what?
Sometimes those relationships matter more than people. And as fans, you don't really see that. A lot of times it's hard to know. If you don't know anybody in there, it's hard to know what those relationships are and who has them.
Right. But you can fast forward to a couple of years ago and Ryan Poles gets a job. Polian did the search. It's a guy who had a lot of success, took 2 different teams to Super Bowls as a general man, 3 different teams, Buffalo, Carolina, and Indianapolis. He's in the Hall of Fame. So the guy's good. I don't particularly like the guy that much, but he's good. He's the way I think happened. Again, I was sitting there. These are your 3 candidates. This guy's by far the best. Now, do you think a rookie GM who just got hired, he's going to tell a Hall of Fame GM, no, I'm going to go another direction?
And it's also when you're looking at that, yeah, he just got hired, and the timing he got hired, the Senior Bowl was a couple days later, or maybe even the practices were starting within
practice
48
already
hours.
Started. He never went down to the Senior Bowl.
Yep,
in fact, what you're going to see this year is,
I'm curious about. Do you think
the odds are against Ryan Poles being at the Senior Bowl?
Oh man, I think he needs to go.
No, you get tape. You got the tape.
I mean, you got the tape. You can watch it, but it's different when you're down there. I think.
And the year we hired Lovey, Jerry wasn't there. I was.
Yeah.
It's because you're busy getting involved with the coach search and doing all the interviews. So it was unless the coaching situation is wrapped up, he ain't going to be there.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't think it's going to be wrapped up by then. I mean, I think practices start in less than 2 weeks. I mean, there's a chance we can get this done in 2 weeks. I don't see it getting done.
Senior
in 2
Bowl
weeks.
report day is a week from Sunday.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So next week,
we're 9 days away, 10 days away from the first practice.
Right.
I don't see our coaching search being done by then. No. I just don't. I did think Ryan Poles was still going to go down to Alabama and maybe do some scouting while continuing to conduct because it's only 3 days. You're down there for 3 days. If we've already interviewed everybody, we've already done 13 or 14 interviews. We have a couple more interviews coming up. Most of the guys aren't going to be available on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, which are the practice days. So I still think it's possible he goes there, but you definitely know more about that than I do.
Well, yeah. Is it possible? Yeah. Will it? I'd say the odds are less than 50, way less than 50%, unless they've hired a McCarthy or something. Then it's a different story. Yeah. So, but if they're down to say, and they're still waiting to get final interviews with, say, Johnson and somebody else, let's just throw out names. Johnson and Baltimore and Detroit are in the Super Bowl. So, and Monken and Johnson are finalists. Well, guess what? You can't negotiate a contract or hire them until after the Super Bowl because they're playing in it. So, could he possibly go down that week? Yeah, maybe a day or two. It's just that, your mind is so locked into the task at hand. What you got to do is you got your lieutenants. And in this case, he's got, Ian Cunningham. Now, Ian could be hired as a GM.
That's the problem right now is Ian's been one of his biggest lieutenants. And Ian yesterday was in Tennessee. It might have been the day before yesterday, conducting his interview for their GM job. So he's busy right now, and his mind could be elsewhere as well.
True, but he's got other guys on he's got a good scouting staff, and you get the tape of every practice, so you can watch the tape. I know when Jerry didn't go, he'd spend hours and hours and hours watching the Senior Bowl tape. Doing the Senior Bowl tape and the East-West tape because he couldn't be at the practices.
I love the East. So I've had access to the East-West tape for this will be my 3rd year now, and I love it. Like, because I'll sit here at my computer all day long. I know my guy Will Wright went down to the East-West Shrine Bowl last year. He actually conducted some interviews and sent me some more footage. But being able to watch that Shrine Bowl tape, I love it. Now, last year there was Senior Bowl footage like that where you could watch at home as well, but that goes away immediately after the Senior Bowl. Whereas the Shrine Bowl footage, you can go back and study that all the way up.
No, I'm on the Shrine Bowl advisory committee.
Yeah, the advisory.
And I could go to the game if I want. I don't want it. So it's in Dallas. I got a great roster this year.
Yeah,
Eric Galco's done a superb job. Each year the roster gets better. 2 years ago, my first year, we had Flowers, the receiver for Baltimore, was the big name.
Zay Flowers?
He practiced, but he didn't play in the game. This year, he's got 6 players from Colorado.
Lights out on that was the first year I had the I was doing Swift Sports then. That was the first year I had Shrine Bowl footage, and I made a video on
it up in one-on-ones.
I was like, this guy, no one could even come so
he was
like,
so
when he stopped,
quick.
Like they were just nobody was near him, man.
So
you could
quick.
tell. And
he's
it was
not tall,
the other
but
guy,
he's put together.
the guy at the Senior Bowl, because there was 2 of them that year that stood out, and they were both undersized, and it was Tank Dell and Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers was the guy from the Shrine Bowl. And then when I watched the Senior Bowl, it was Tank Dell. And both of those guys, it's like, look, if you're doing mock drafts, this was months before the draft. And you're right. If you're doing mock drafts, these guys are going in the 5th or 6th round. Clearly, these guys aren't going that low. But these guys, it's just tough to peg where they're going to go because their explosiveness and their home run speed, nobody could cover them. I'm hoping to find someone like that this year in this class. We'll see.
I got
I have
some
a couple
guys
guys
for
I'm
you.
watching.
I gotta go through all my reports. There's 3 receivers that I got marked, and I can't think of the names right now, but I'll give them to you. They all of them are probably day 3 guys that I
right
think
now.
Yeah, but you just look at the average number of receivers that go each year and stuff. Now, how does that change? They blow it out at Indy as far as running a lot faster than anticipated.
Yep, and the senior. I mean, that's what Zay Flowers and Tank Dell did the last two years. I mean, those guys.
Zay went like 4.4, 4.3 something or something. You know, Zay.
He went in the first round, didn't he? He was the guy who was supposed to go in the 4th, and then Tank went. Did Tank go first round too, or he went second?
Second
round, I think. Yeah, but yeah, those guys are crazy. I did have a question from the chat here. He wants to know your thoughts on Todd Monken. I haven't talked about him a lot on the channel. I did talk about him previously when we had Justin Fields. I actually thought he would have been a good coach to come in for Justin Fields. What are your thoughts on him with Caleb Williams, though? To me, I have him. I like him, but he's not up there with my favorites. He's slightly below.
Well, I got like a group of 5 or so. Actually, it's 6, but I don't think. And Aaron Glenn's one of the 6.
I was going to say, and I wanted to talk to you. Did you see? So there's this clip. He did an interview on the Pivot where he talks about. I think I might have even talked about it with you last time we talked. Maybe not. But he talks about basically getting to know players and his relationship with them.
Yeah,
it's one of the best clips I've ever heard. And I went and watched that whole interview. And I got to tell you, man, Aaron Glenn is a player. I loved him. And just. If there's one defensive candidate that stands out, it's Aaron Glenn to me. And I hate
just look at the job he did.
My favorite.
13 players on IR in Detroit, yet that defense didn't lose a beat. He did a phenomenal job. He's not getting anywhere near the credit that he should. I had a text conversation going on with a national reporter 2 days ago.
Okay.
And I said, why do you got him tagged going to this team? I go, this guy's might be the best candidate of the whole group. But because he's a defensive guy, he's getting undervalued.
Where'd they have him going? Was it the Saints by any chance? Or
no, the Jets.
Oh okay. I kind of
who the fuck would want to go to the Jets?
I kind of think he's going to go to the Saints. He played there towards the end of his career.
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of people that got McCarthy going there. And it's really for the same reason they got Glenn going there. No, McCarthy going to the Saints and people got Glenn going to the Saints, and it's all for the same reason. Glenn played there. Glenn coached there. He's got a relationship with Mickey Loomis, the GM. Mm-hmm. McCarthy coached there. He's got a relationship with Mickey Loomis. So they're trying to put 1 and 1 together and get 2. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I've also heard rumors of people saying McCarthy could go to the Jets and maybe reunite for 1 more year with Aaron Rodgers. But with the way their relationship deteriorated, I don't know if that's something I could see or that anybody wants.
Aaron Rodgers now versus Aaron Rodgers when he was with McCarthy is like 2 different players.
Yeah, and that was the biggest reason for their downfall and why McCarthy was fired. I remember reading a lot of articles on it, and McCarthy's talked about it since. It's been a long time since it happened now, but he said basically what happened there is McCarthy kind of got over egotistical and thought, look, we're good because of my system, not Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb and all these players. It's because of my system. And they kept butting heads, and eventually he learned the hard way that players matter too. And I think that's
right to do.
That makes me worried about.
There's not a good coach. There's not a good coach in the world that didn't have good players.
Yeah. Now
Bill Parcells was great because we had Lawrence Taylor, Banks, Phil Simpson. Yeah.
I mean, Lovie Smith, we had players. I mean, players make coaches great.
That's
and I hate that there's so many egos involved. The same thing happened with Belichick and Brady. But yeah, Rodgers and McCarthy were together for 13 seasons. So there's always going to be ups and downs in a relationship between a coach and a player when you're together for that long.
You know, I'm a firm believer. I'm glad you brought that up, the 13 seasons. And I kind of believe that 10 is the number, and then it's time to go on to somewhere else because you can get stale.
That's just a long time. I mean, there was actually a quote from Mike McCarthy's wife where after he got fired, his wife was happy that he got fired from the Packers. And he was like, I didn't understand it, why she would be happy when I lost my job. And he said, she had to tell me, Mike, you haven't been yourself for the last 3 years. You've been coasting. You weren't happy there. You were butting heads with everyone, and you were just on autopilot. And he said he had to take that year off, spend some time with his wife, and get back to the love of football. And then he went and got a job in Dallas and kind of reestablished what he was doing. But, I mean, that hard-headedness, it also makes me question if that's the guy I want as our head coach, you know? Well, he's not my favorite.
No, he's not my favorite either, but he's one of the 5 or 6.
Yeah, he's up. He's probably 5th or 6th.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way. If he got the job, am I going to be disappointed? No.
Is he better than anything we've had since Lovie Smith? Yes. Is he an offensive coach? Yes. Has he had great success with quarterbacks? Yes. Those are all things I want.
All I know is he goes to the playoffs 70% of the years he's coached.
We've won 1 playoff game since we went to the Super Bowl in 2006.
I'll leave him. I shouldn't mention the name, but I will. I get a text because I've known the guy for a long time. I get a text from Joe Banner.
Okay.
And you know who Joe Banner is?
Yeah.
Okay. Former president of the Eagles, president of the Browns. Obviously, he puts it up. Pull it out here.
Let's say there was an echo.
I'm shocked to see you're on board with hiring McCarthy. Get ready to suffer for a bunch more years if that happens. That's his first text. And I put back, I'm not entirely on board. I'm not on board with anybody. We both know there's no guarantee that any will be successful. At least with Mike, there was a track record. And then he goes on to say, well, yeah, he gets the teams to the playoffs, but they underachieve in the playoffs and all that. And I'm thinking, like, have you been into Chicago lately? Yeah. You know, and there's a lot to do with success. It's the players you have, the coaching staff that you have, the front office that you have in place, the players that they get you, what's your relationship with the front office. You don't want to be able to overpower the front office. But that's the problem that Flores had in Miami, as he kept trying to overpower the front office. Yep. That's stuff that's not really out there in the public, but that's what was going on. In fact, speaking of Flores, did you see the Fitzpatrick video that he did about Flores?
Ryan Fitzpatrick? Or?
Yeah.
I did not.
Go watch that. You'll never let Flores even in for an interview, let alone and he played for the guy.
So
and not only that, he kills the guy but says, I really like him. I consider him a friend, but fucking machine gunned him.
But he just basically gives a reason why we don't want Flores.
Well, it wasn't just anybody. But okay. and it's really because of what went on with Miami, and he still got a lawsuit going. He didn't get hired yet. He can get hired as an assistant, but I doubt, because you think about his lawsuit. He's suing the NFL. Who's the NFL? The 32 owners. So you're going to hire a guy who's suing your ass?
Yeah, that's a great point there. And I do like Brian Flores. I do think he's a good coach. But when I'm looking, I've said all along I want an offensive candidate. So when I was going through the defensive candidates, and Aaron Glenn just stood out to me. So it's like, look, if we did for some reason, hire a defensive guy. The guy I'd want is Aaron Glenn. So to me, and when I'm putting together my top 5, Aaron Glenn's going to be my defensive guy. Mike McCarthy's probably 6th. And then my top 4 would probably be, in no particular order, I'm Ben Johnson there, of course. Cliff Kingsbury, of course. Joe Brady is my 3rd. And then
I don't have Kingsbury.
you don't have – see, I
don't
want to
want
talk
anything
to
to do with him.
Here's where I go with Kingsbury, okay? He's been a head coach. A lot of people out here want someone who's been a head coach. His team got his first 3 years in Arizona. They got better every year. They won 5 games. They won 8 games. They won 11 games. And in that year when they won 11 games, Kyler Murray got MVP votes. He put together a season that would have been better than any in Chicago history. The next year he tore his ACL and they won 4 games. Now, I understand they fell off, but when your starting quarterback tears your ACL, that your team usually doesn't win a lot of games. So
see, I go back.
I don't know how that's exactly Kingsbury's fault. That was a team that was up and coming and on the rise.
His defense, I don't think his staff was that good. I don't think his defense was that good.
And since he's been
then
gone,
you go back to when he was a college head coach. He had
Patrick Mahomes.
Jesus Christ, he had Patrick Mahomes quarterback for him, and 1 year he had a winning season. I mean, he got him in 1 bowl game. I
mean, it's hard to win at Texas Tech when you don't have a defense. I mean, it was the same thing
there.
They put together
the Big 12 at that time. Nobody plays defense. It's like exactly, 7-on-7. So, but he couldn't win with the best quarterback in college football, arguably, and so.
But he did win in the NFL, and what he's done this year with a rookie quarterback. And he has a relationship with Caleb Williams already. I know he wasn't technically his coach, but he was an offensive analyst. And I have heard quotes that, yes, they do have a relationship and like each other. So I just think, to me, Kingsbury is a guy, when I go back to before this year started, and I was looking at offensive coordinator candidates, I kind of felt like you did with Kingsbury. I was like, I don't really want him. But the work he's done with Jaden Daniels and that offense, I just think he's up there for me. I think he has to be up there for me. I think Ben Johnson and Joe Brady are probably right there with him. But then the other guy, to me, is probably Todd Monken. I'm probably putting Todd Monken in there just because of the success he's had with Lamar.
Well, it's not, you go back and you look at let's kind of break these guys individually. I like Brady a lot. Brady's also the youngest guy. He's like 35.
He's the youngest. But I mean, every time I've ever listened to Joe Brady talk or seen him interacting with players, I've always come away impressed. And that's going all the way back to LSU, because he is a guy I did want to hire. When we fired Luke Getsy, I wanted Joe Brady. I believe we talked about that somewhere.
Well, last year he was Actually, last year we fired Luke Getsy, and he was already the OC in Buffalo. So
I think I had talked about it before we actually fired Brady. Yeah.
So there's no question he's good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, my only thing, and I don't have the answer. And I say to people, well, why don't you have a favorite? And I said, because I'm not sitting in the room listening to the answers.
Yeah.
That I've done that before. I know how important the interview process is. So with Brady, I mean, with all these guys, it's who's your staff going to be? And that's one of the important parts that goes on in the interview. It's not like these guys go, well, give me the job and I'll figure out who my staff is. No, they already got a really strong idea who their staff's going to be. They got 1 or 2 guys lined up for the coordinators. They've already talked to these people. They're ready to go. And, there's very few set marriages, where you're going to say, well, if we hire you, we want you to hire Ron Rivera as a DC. Because he's, trying to force a coach on a guy doesn't sit well. It's in his contract that he can hire who he wants. Now, can that happen? Yes, but it happens rarely. But with Brady, it's can he handle a whole team versus an offense? I know we can handle the offense. He's had to deal with some strong personalities. He had Stephon Diggs last year. He had Ford last year. I mean, he had some bad character guys. Not that they were malicious, but just not team guys on that team in Buffalo. They got rid of them. They didn't miss a beat. I mean, they got a bunch of no names playing receiver this year, and yet,
Well, I love Keon Coleman, but
yeah, but he was a second round pick and had no skins on the wall. And that's what I mean by no names. Now, yeah, they made a trade for the one guy,
Mari Cooper,
at the trade deadline, and he's just now starting to really fit in with everybody. But their wide receiver, if you watch Buffalo, and I watch every game because I'm from there, is their wide receiver by committee. They don't have a legitimate one, a legitimate two. They have a legitimate slot receiver, and he might be their best guy. And he was like a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick a couple years ago, and I loved him. I had like a 3rd round grade on him.
Someone in the chat had just commented what you said before you actually said it. They had said they'd love to see Cliff Kingsbury or Joe Brady with Ron Rivera as DC. Now, I don't know how likely that is, but I'd love it.
Well, let's go back. So with Brady, it's like, okay, who's your staff? And if he's not sure of his staff or what direction he wants to go with his staff, now you don't have to worry about the OC with a guy like him because he is the OC. Whoever's going to be the OC is really OC in name only. But it's who's your defensive guy and who's your defensive staff. And if he doesn't have a good name, then you could say, well, we got this guy. But then you've got to set up a meeting with them to make sure they're, and nobody has to know about that. That could be 2 coaches talking to each other, so, and that's not really breaking any rules because, especially in Ron's case, because he's unemployed.
Yep.
But
I would love to have Ron Rivera back here, but as defensive coach,
I love Ron. I mean, he is a really
not his coach.
Good coach.
Yeah.
Big question is, does he want to go back? He's been a head coach for a long time. Does he want to go back and be a DC?
Yeah, I don't know if he does.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
But this is my thinking with that. If he did, and there was a team he would do it for, I think it would be the Bears. Because out of the coaches out there,
he loves this team. He's
the only one that has that special relationship with the Bears. He loves the city. He won a Super Bowl here.
That's right.
I would love to see him come back and be DC.
He's an 85 Bear, so he's automatically anointed. So it goes with the territory. And that was one of the problems between Lovey and Ron is that, there's a little jealousy there because Ron was getting all the accolades and
I remember it. There was a lot of fans who actually during that time, I know Lovey is very revered now and everybody loves Lovey, but during that time, there were fans, I remember, that wanted to fire Lovey and promote Ron Rivera so we didn't lose him because they loved Ron Rivera that much.
Yeah, I was in the office when Ron got fired.
Yeah,
you know how long? You were there? How long? Yeah, I was there.
Oh man!
Do you know how long it took Ron to get a job?
Probably 15.
Literally,
minutes. Probably before he walked out of Hallis Hall.
Yes, less than 2 hours. He had a job done. As going to, he went to the Chargers. So
he went to the Chargers and became their DC, right? Yeah, right. I remember that. Yeah,
and it was before he had his office packed up.
And that's one guy, Kiyu mentioned it here, but if you bring in Ron Rivera, that's a guy who's going to help get the culture right. And if we get, this is something that I haven't talked about at all, but if we do manage to hire one of these young offensive coaches, I think pairing them with a guy like Ron Rivera, if it's an option, and this is something that a lot of people don't think about when we have all these interviews out here. It's very possible when we get done, We're going to hire a head coach, and we could also get a coordinator that we interviewed for a head coach job as well. All these guys out there. It depends how it goes, but Ron Rivera is one of those guys.
I think that's less than 50%. It depends. Like, okay, let's use
McCarthy. It depends on who it is.
McCarthy's going to bring a staff he had in Dallas.
Yeah, if we got McCarthy would bring Al Harris as DC. Who is his? I don't remember who his OC was.
No, Zimmer was his DC last.
Oh yeah, Al Harris.
Quinn was his defensive coordinator. Then he loses Quinn to Washington, and he brings in Zimmer, who actually coached in Dallas a long time ago, and the former Viking head coach. There's been talk that Zimmer may want to retire. So, but you said it depends on the situation. Now, one thing I want to bring this up. This is from, who Ed Werder is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ed Werder.
Used to be with ESPN. Now he's independent. When ESPN had their big cut down about a year ago. So where is this? And I've known Ed for years and years and years. So this is a book. I said, Ed, you covered the Cowboys. What's your opinion of McCarthy? Thanks. He didn't send me back 2 or 3 lines. He sent me a frickin' book. Okay. He says, I have a high opinion of him, both as a person and a head coach, from time covering in Green Bay and more frequently Dallas. He created a quality program here in terms of player development. He has a young players meeting every morning during the season and quarterback school every day to provide extra coaching for those players.
Oh, wow.
Plays young players, has created strong relationships with players at all positions in the locker room. His record in Green Bay and Dallas prove he wins when he has his starting QB. Won 12 games all 3 years. Dak was healthy, lost 10 each of the 2 seasons he was injured, and missed 20 total games. Also won half games with backup quarterbacks. Let me get into this. Strong coaching staff, although he had 3 DCs in Dallas. Very trustworthy, dedicated man with high values. Not sure his system is elite or that he is as a play caller. Doubt he will ever run the ball consistently. Top NFL 6 rushing teams made playoffs. Overall, I think it's unlikely Jerry hires someone better than Mike McCarthy.
Ooh, I like that. I like that take there. And I kind of, with the coaching, with the hires of how it's going right now and the candidates that are going around, I do think Mike McCarthy is one of the top 5 candidates out there for the Chicago Bears, especially considering we need offense. We need a guy that can develop Caleb Williams. And you mentioned a lot of things there. His player development, what he put into Dallas and helped them with player development all over the roster. And you can see young players being developed all over the Cowboys, going back a few years from CeeDee Lamb. But you have guys like Mozzie Smith and that offensive line. They have young guys like Tyler Smith and Cooper Beebe that have played really well as youngsters. So there are guys there developing players, and I love that. I love that about him. I love the success he's had with quarterbacks. Look at the quarterbacks he's worked with. Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, and Dak Prescott. So
didn't he? He was in New Orleans too. Before he went to Green Bay.
Okay, he was there with Breeze. Okay, yep.
I'm not sure, 100% sure he was there with Breeze, but he was in New Orleans as the OC before he became the head coach in Green Bay.
Okay. I'll have to look up the timeline on that. But I mean, is that a prodigy of having great quarterbacks that you got the luxury of coaching, or are you also helping those quarterbacks become who they are? Because I don't think
it's got to be a combination of the two. I mean,
Exactly.
when you get a rare player like an Aaron Rodgers, you're helping Aaron Rodgers, but you've already got a great player.
Mm-hmm. But you also have to, a lot of times in the NFL, there's a lot of guys that are drafted that are really talented, and they never reach the height of their potential. And a lot of it's due to they never get a coach that can take them there. So we at least know that Mike McCarthy, when he's put with a good quarterback, success comes from that and development of the quarterback happens. And those quarterbacks can then usually go on to be fine after, even if Mike McCarthy leaves or somewhere or goes somewhere else or retires.
Right.
And that's key for us, is developing Caleb Williams. Mike McCarthy's not my favorite, but I'm not completely against it. And I did want to talk about that. But my favorite is Ben Johnson. That's the guy I want. There's all these rumors going around. Are you worried about the Raiders right now with this Tom Brady stuff that's coming in? No. Okay, good.
Not in the slightest. I think it's people trying to put one and one together to get two, because it's real easy to do. Oh, he's going to go there because of Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, now look at reality. I mean, first of all, they got cash flow problems in Las Vegas, and they've had it for years.
They also have. I just don't know if you're Ben Johnson, right? You're an offensive guy. You want to go there with a plan on how to develop that offense. I saw Raiders fans on Twitter kind of advertising it as, oh, look, you get to pick your own QB if you come here. like that was a benefit.
They ain't got one.
That means you don't have a quarterback, and
they don't have one, and they're not sitting in position where they can get one.
They're picking number 6. If they would have lost one more game and had a top 3 pick, then yeah, okay, maybe you can get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. But setting at pick 6, no.
Well, personally, I don't think either one is worthy of a top 5 pick. But
I like both.
Will both of them go high? Yes.
Yeah, but I think they both go in the top 5 almost no matter what.
Right. I get that. I just. Going that high and being worthy of going that high are two different things.
I am a big fan of Cam Ward. I like Shedeur Sanders' talent. My questions with Shedeur are all about his mentality and is he mature enough for the NFL? He does have Dion who coached him, and he has a different persona. But I've just seen things and clips going around viral of Shedeur where it's like, you got to grow up a little bit, kid. With Cam, anytime I've watched Cam, and I even watched him all the way back at Incarnate Ward, that's where he was 2 years ago. And
actually more than that, that was 4 years ago, because he was at Washington State 2 years.
Yep.
His first year at Washington State, I thought he may come out.
Yeah, I actually had him graded. Yeah, I had him graded like a
good player. Then he goes back. And I thought, okay, for sure. So he's there 22 and 23. I thought he'd be in the 23 draft. No, he goes back for the 23 season. So you think, okay, he's going to be in the 24 draft. He enters the draft, pulls out, goes to Miami, gets a bunch of NIL money. Probably helped himself because he played, really allowed himself to play in a different kind of system.
Oh yeah, I think he flew up draft boards this year. He was a question,
but I've always felt he was a 1. Going back,
I always felt he had that talent. Yep.
Yeah.
Me too. Yep.
Going back a few years. And he's probably the best guy here. But I honestly can't say that any of the guys this year are as good as, say, the top 5 last year.
Yeah,
I'm the quarterback position.
I just think I would probably put Cam Ward. I would maybe put Cam Ward 4th last year. I wasn't very high on Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy. Bo Nix has had a good year. I got to see how that translates over a couple of years in the NFL.
He's got Sean Payton, so that helps.
That's my thing. Sean Payton's a lot of that. And with rookies, a lot of times when they have great coaches, okay, they come out and do this. But now that the NFL has had a year to study him, let's see how the defenses adjust to Bo Nix next year, because he has some inconsistencies in his play. So we'll see how that goes. I like Cam. If I had to choose between Cam Ward, Bo Nix, and JJ McCarthy, I'm taking Cam Ward out of those. I do like Cam, but I don't want to get too far off track here. But
okay.
I do like Cam Ward. But do you have a favorite coaching candidate? I said mine was Ben Johnson. You don't have one right now? Okay.
No, I said I'm happy, and I say it 1,000 times because I can't sit in the room and listen, and haven't been privy to that before. That's important. But to me too, okay, Ben Johnson, who's your staff? Who's your DC? We know he can run an offense, and he is going to be the
important one with Ben.
Who is he is going to be he will be the coordinator. Now, I have a good idea who his OC may be.
Who do you think? Because someone in the chat asked that a few minutes ago, and
I can't say.
Okay, not going to say. We'll say.
I'll tell you off the air, but I'm not going to say. And I have talked to this person, and all he said was, "Well, I think it's a little too early." Kind of giggle, to say that. So, but it's somebody I know very, very well.
Okay.
And you know, it's you know, I think he can handle a full room. Do I know he can handle a full room? Nope. See, my dark horse, this I've been waiting for this one. My dark horse is David Shaw.
Ooh, yeah, David Shaw's a guy. He's getting some pub. I like what I've seen from David Shaw. I think he's a little bit of a gamble. And if I was in the room,
he's not a gamble at all. And I'll tell you why. Number
Yeah.
one, I've seen him coach. I've met him a couple times, but I can't say I know him. Okay, but I've watched him coach. He's a great coach. He has 8 or 9 years in the league, but he hasn't been in the league in like 19 years. Okay, then, but he grew up in the NFL. His dad was like a lifer NFL coach. He's been around the NFL forever. His dad was a really good coach too. I can't think of his dad's first name. Was with the Vikings for a real long time. At Stanford, now Stanford is not an easy place to coach at because you're starting off behind everybody else because you can't get players in. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're at the SEC. They've got Ivy League admission standards, yet they were playing in the Pac-12. And the admission standards or the admissions people would not budge. And that's why he ended up finally leaving. They kept making promises. And then after the 22 season, he said, fuck it, I'm done. Between NIL and getting people in, they were so far behind that he knew it was really hurting him because he had for the longest time, he was the hot guy. You saw it every year. David Shaw, people are trying to push David Shaw every year. Nope, I'm staying at Stanford. But now he's ready. And I think that's one of the reasons he went to Denver to work in personnel was really get a feel and work with Peyton too, was get a feel for the NFL because it's been a while since he's been in the NFL. But as a coach, really strict. He's not an asshole strict. He's a good guy. No, he is. I did a podcast with Pat, the designer, and Jason McKee the other day. And they asked me how to describe him. And I said, I think the best way to describe him is Lovey on steroids.
I like that.
Because he's a better – Lovey's real quiet. David Shaw's real quiet. Okay? Lovey was a silent assassin. David Shaw's a silent assassin. You know, it's like Lovey had this real easy manner, but you didn't dare fuck with him. You know, and that's the same way with Shaw. You know, they're not holler guys like Saban is. You know, they're not going to hard coach you, but I know people who've worked with him for a long time. Pep being one of them. I think the world of the guy. You know, put him way up here. So to me, he checks a lot of the boxes. Long time as head coach, albeit not the NFL. He did work with Harbaugh. He was Harbaugh's coordinator. And then when Harbaugh left to go to San Francisco, that's when Shaw got the head coaching job.
Someone in the chat had a question here, and this is something I wanted to address. They say, I've heard so many people say this, no more head coaches without any head coaching experience. Give us McCarthy, a proven winner. Here's my thing to that, guys.
That was John Fox.
When you say you want an experienced head coach, it also means you want a guy that's been fired from another team, because there isn't a single candidate out there that's been a head coach in the NFL that has not been fired yet. And McCarthy wasn't fired by the Cowboys, but he was fired by the Green Bay Packers. Every
Well,
other
you can
coach
say
out
anything about Quinn though. Dan Quinn
Yep.
in Washington. Quinn was a
and
second
retread
go
head
around.
coaches, they work sometimes. They work sometimes. But
Belichick was the retread.
when you look at the best head coaches in the NFL right now, Andy Reid,
Andy Reid was the
he's
retread.
it. He was the Eagles head.
I was
But
there. I was
he
there
won
for
a
his last
Super
year.
Bowl with the Eagles, so it's not
I don't know
like
if he. No, I don't think he won the Super
he at
Bowl. He
least
went to
went to
Super
the
Bowl.
Super Bowl with
Right.
Donovan McNabb.
But
Yeah,
I was
they
there. What
lost that.
happened? I went there for one reason. So it was the 2012 season. I wanted to work for Andy Reid. I'd worked with Dan Reeves. I'd worked with Bill Parcells. I'd worked with Lovey. I'd worked with some good people. So I wanted just, I want to work with this guy. So I got, I knew Howie, got a consulting job there. And we start camp, and 1 week into camp, his kid ODs in the dorms where we're right there. We were on the campus and dies, and the whole season went downhill. And I remember asking Howie, you go, why'd you fire? He said, we had to. It just, it was time. And I guarantee you they regret it now. But I think it reinvigorated him when he went to Kansas City.
Yep. And he also, I mean, once you get Patrick Mahomes and he turns into who he is, that's something that goes with things in the NFL. If they don't get Patrick Mahomes, say the Bears take Patrick Mahomes at 2 and the Chiefs end up drafting Trubisky or Watson, things aren't exactly the same there. And
no question. No question. So, that is a point that nobody can argue. But he still, when you look at the turnover in personnel, especially at the wide receiver position, say at that team, and really on the defense and some of the offensive line, they keep turning it over, and yet they just keep on winning.
Yep. And so it's not like that can't happen. Dan Quinn is another one. But when you look at the top NFL head coaches, most of them are going to be guys who get a job and have a ton of success, not retreads, because there's more retreads that are failures and get hired a second time and then fired within a year or two. There's a lot higher percentage of that happening than there are guys who get hired a second time and go on to have success like Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, or even the limited success Dan Quinn has had right now. There's a lot more.
You could say Sean Payton too, but Sean Payton quit.
He didn't get fired. Sean Payton kind of retired due to age and then came back. And also, didn't they have to trade for him as well? He was still under contract there, or I don't remember how that went down.
I'd have to look that one up. I think he sat out a year and did stuff for Fox.
Yeah, the Broncos gave the Saints their first round pick from last year, 2023, the 29th overall pick, and a 2024 second for Sean Payton. So 2 picks. The Saints chose Brian Brzee with the first one, defensive tackle out of Clemson that I really like. So yeah, giving up picks for a coach, that's completely different than being fired and open on the market again.
Right.
And that's where if and I don't think there's any chance this happens, but if Kyle Shanahan was available and the Bears could get Kyle Shanahan, then yeah, I'm all in for that. But I say 0 chance it happens, so I don't like to waste a lot of time talking about it.
Sean's a local guy too. If this was, he's been at Denver 2 years. If this was 2 years ago, would he be here instead of there?
Man, I'd love that. I love Sean Payton.
I'm
a big Sean Payton guy.
I'm
not a big John Gruden guy, but I'm a big Sean Payton guy.
Somebody sent me a text today and goes, or a DM, somebody I never heard of. He goes, Gruden's in town today. Does that mean anything for the Bears? And I said, no.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to that because I have been getting John Gruden is one guy I haven't talked about. I've talked to him about him in my comments because people keep asking me about him. But if you guys haven't seen John Gruden recently, he's been doing a YouTube show this year where he breaks down NFL and he acts crazy and he's got a Chucky doll with him and he's going wild. I don't see him I don't see players taking him seriously as a head coach right now, but maybe it's just a bit, but that's why I haven't really talked about him. I think his head
He's
coach.
unhireable right now.
Yeah.
What happened between him and Bruce Allen? Bruce was the GM or the president of Washington at the time, and Gruden was at the Raiders. Now the relationship is when Gruden was the head coach at Tampa, Allen was the GM at Tampa. So I mean, these guys are longtime friends, and they're going back and forth with emails, and it got both of them fired.
I remember hearing some reports about
that.
that.
And he's got a lawsuit going against the league.
Ooh, yeah.
And so, nobody with a lawsuit's getting you drop the lawsuit, maybe, but like in Fleury's case, he said, no, that I will not drop the lawsuit. He didn't go to win it. He doesn't have to drop it, but he didn't go to win it. So, it's in fact, with Fleury's, let's just hit that. They are so far away from getting that lawsuit settled. They're still arguing on who's going to hear it.
Oh, wow.
Is it going to be, by league rules, it's supposed to be arbitrated because he was a coach. And so if you have a problem with a firing or whatever, it goes to arbitration. And the commissioner picks the arbitrator, which could be himself. And he said, no, we got to take it to court. Well, they can't even get an agreement on that. And that's been going on for 2 years.
Yeah, tough one. All right, we got a couple questions here in chat before we wrap up. Kiyu asked Greg, when a coach is interviewing, do most of these guys already have a staff laid out that they think they can get already, or that they agree they would hire? Or at least mention guys?
No, that's all part of the process. You got to know.
That's something.
Now, going back to when we hired Lovey,
okay,
that was not necessarily the case.
Oh, okay.
And Lovey had a list. He had a hot list of guys. And the reason being is back then, coaches, as far as the NFL was concerned, all coaches were on a level playing field. There was no distinction between, say, a defensive line coach and a defensive coordinator or whatever. So we wanted to bring in Marinelli, who was under contract with Tampa as a defensive coordinator. This is how Rivera got the job, by the way.
Yeah.
And Tampa turned it down because now you can't do that. You put in a permission slip for a guy who's got a position, he's a position coach, and it's for a better job, you have to grant permission.
Yeah, you have to grant him though. Yep.
Okay. That is one of the main reasons there are a million titles floating around in the NFL right now.
Yeah, you got those assistant head coaches and
same thing with the front office.
Coordinator.
Nobody had assistant GMs. Now you got
just
assistant GM.
Give guys raises.
It's to now you got to pay for it. You got to give more money because of the title, but it's to get the people you want, and the other team can't say no.
Yeah, because you're basically, if you're promoting them, and that's when you're taking a guy that, say a guy's a D-line coach somewhere, and you want to bring him over, but you're not making him your defensive coordinator.
You make him the run coordinator.
You would have to make him the running game coordinator, the passing game or assistant head coach, one of those titles. And that's one of the things that, but you can also do, it works the other way as well. When Sean McVay had Thomas Brown in St. Louis or LA, wherever they are now, basically was like, I'm going to make you the assistant head coach so no one can just take you from my team and give you a raise, because you can't really go over that. But
a coordinator's over it, and he took a coordinator's job.
Yep. And then this is a chat, one of the first questions in chat, but I was waiting for it till later because I just heard this happen just a couple days ago. Reddy Stewart is no longer on the team. He actually went around and apparently visited 5 or 6 different teams. He signed with the Minnesota Vikings. How do you feel about us losing the young undrafted free agent from this year?
What happens is you have an opportunity. Well, they have the day after the season ends, they can sign the guys to the practice squad to a future contract. Okay. Does that guy have to sign? No. Okay. Usually it's done. It's almost a formality, but there are guys you don't want back. You've seen them in practice, and you don't want them. Okay, in the case of Reddy, I'm going to say this, just from the outside looking in. There's too much freaking competition on this team at that position. That's the strongest position group on the team. He knows he isn't going to play. So, he probably said, no, I'm going to go somewhere else where I got a better chance to play.
And that's the biggest issue here is when you look at Chicago's depth chart, we are stacked at cornerback with Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, Terrell Smith. He has all these guys above him, and then also
Jalen Jones,
special teams guys, Jalen Jones and Josh
Blackman game.
It's hard to make this roster.
Yeah. So I guarantee you that's what happened. He
and
said,
he sees Minnesota. He watched Minnesota last week and was like, those cornerbacks are terrible. Why don't I sign there?
Yeah.
That's a good point. I hate it.
It is.
You hate to see it. And that's it's one of those things where Poles did a good job of identifying the talent, but we don't have
part of the thing, he doesn't run that good. He's got great ball skills, but
awesome
his time speed is below average for that position. If you go through the whole corner roster and look at what they ran coming out, the slowest guy is Gordon, and he's 4.51 at the combine and plays a lot faster. Those guys can frickin' fly now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I see get better every year. Faster and faster cornerbacks, faster safeties even. You got these linebackers that can fly. We got defensive ends that can run with wide receivers now. And I'm excited about the Senior Bowl again this year because we have a lot of young talent in this year's draft. And hopefully we can get it right and get a bunch more talent on there. Any more final questions before we go? Let me just make sure I didn't have any here that I missed. Someone did ask who Ben Johnson. Q asked, Greg, do you ever see ageism in the NFL, like older guys not wanting to work for younger guys? So I think this was when we were talking about if we hire.
I see it the other way around.
Oh, okay. Because
if we hire Ben Johnson, the older guys because they don't like the experience. They're afraid of the experience the older guy has.
Oh, okay. So it's actually the opposite. A lot of the younger guys don't like hiring the older guys.
They're a threat. That guy knows more than me. I know that guy knows more than me. So
yeah. So in the situation, if we hired a Joe Brady or a Ben Johnson, and what Greg's basically saying here is they could be intimidated, and not necessarily these two guys, but he's seen this in examples in the NFL.
I've seen
they
it.
Don't want to bring in a guy like a Ron Rivera or a Robert Saleh to be the DC because they have more experience than them, and they could see that as a threat. I get that.
Let me put it this way: I see it. I've seen it in the front office.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really say honestly for a coach. If I'm a young head coach, I want some experience. I mean, especially if I'm a first-time head coach. If you can get me a guy who was a head coach in the building, that helps you.
And as a fan, that's what I want.
Yeah, he helps walk you through situations.
Yep.
You could have some of these situations that went on in the Bears locker room, and it's all new to you because it's hitting you for the first time, and you got a Ron Rivera or somebody who's been through it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Give me a Ben Johnson or a Cliff Kingsbury or a Joe Brady and pair them with a defensive guy who's been a coach before, whether that's Ron Rivera or Robert Saleh, whoever. Bring us in a defensive guy that's going to help our coach out and hopefully not bring all the egos into it. Because if that happens,
Swifty, look at the defensive coordinators on the street.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Lou Anarumo, the guy from the Big. I love Lou Anarumo. So there's guys.
Lou, there's Rivera. There's the guy who was the interim coach for the Jets.
Oh, yep.
Okay.
There are on our candidate list. There were some other guys on there as well that were defensive guys. I mean, Anthony. Well, you can't really. You can't take a DC guy and bring him over and. You can't bring over Aaron Glenn as DC. We can't bring over Anthony Weaver as DC. But there are a lot of other guys out there. Leslie Frazier is the DC for the Bills, so that's going to be
Leslie Frazier is a defensive coach with Seattle now.
Oh, yeah.
And he is interviewing maybe today with Dallas for the head job.
Oh, he's interviewing for the head coaching job,
And
but
he's been
not
a head
the
coach.
defensive coordinator, so he is an option for defensive coordinator then as well if he doesn't land a head coaching job.
Yeah, I don't think he's the DC in Seattle, but I have to check.
Yeah, I know Salah runs a 3-4. Coaches can switch that up, and a lot of people don't realize. I mean, 60 to 70% of base defense now is nickel, so you're not
Right.
in 3-4.
It's more than that, and the main difference is how you use your defensive tackles now, because everybody is really playing with a 4-man front.
Yep.
Very seldom are you seeing. Just watch the Jets.
Yep.
Okay, and go back to watch San Francisco when he was there. They're playing 4-man fronts.
Yeah, they play 4-man. I mean, they did all the time in San Francisco. Yeah.
So I did that doesn't worry me. But what could very well happen, depending on who the DC is here, is and then when Chico went back to a 4-3 when he went to
that's Carolina, a great example there. Yeah, he ran a 4-3 in Chicago. Chico, if you guys don't know, you should, but that's Ron Rivera. He ran a 4-3 with the Bears, went to the Chargers and ran a 3-4.
What he did is the other personnel were 3-4 people.
Yep. A lot of times it depends on your personnel. Our personnel, currently, we are not set up to run a 3-4.
No.
We'd have to make a lot of changes at linebacker and get some nose. I mean, I get Andrew Billings could be a nose, but
he is a nose, but he plays the one technique.
Yeah, but it's a little different.
I think he can play in any scheme. He's one of those guys that can. Dexter can play in any scheme. I think, and I said this on another show too, they need another big body in the rotation. And because when they lost Billings, they lost a ton. And Billings isn't tall, but he's got a lot of girth.
We just need more talent in the trenches. I think that's a theme on the offensive line and defensive line. More talent in the trenches. That's our goal this offseason. Other than hiring a head coach, adding talent to the trenches. That's number one priority.
No question.
Yeah, and another great point here. Mike Tomlin was a 4-3 guy in Minnesota. Yeah, a lot of times that's some of the good coaches. If you're a good defensive coach, it doesn't matter if it's a 4-3 or a 3-4. They'll figure it out.
He took over a team that was a lifelong 3-4 team, and that's the personnel they had on the team.
Yep, and that's the thing. Good coaches get the most out of their talent. They don't try to be Matt Nagy and force players into their system. They get the most out of the players that they have on the roster. So that's our biggest hope.
I'm surprised he's getting interviews, but I don't think he's going to be like Flores. He isn't going to get hired yet.
Which guy?
Nagy.
Oh, Matt Nagy. Yeah. I don't see Nagy getting a job. I do see Aaron Glenn getting a job no matter what.
Oh, no question.
Yep.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't mind him getting a job here, but I just don't think it's going to happen because he's on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I want an offensive guy. If we went with the defensive guy, he's my choice. But I still would rather have an offensive guy when it's all said and done, just because of how important it is to develop Caleb Williams. Now, if Aaron Glenn could get a guy to develop Caleb and work that offense, sign me up.
That's how he becomes a top candidate here, is who's his offensive people going to be.
Yeah,
they already, I guarantee you right now, as we're sitting here, Ryan Poles already knows that.
Yeah,
because he's already interviewed the guy.
The Bears know that right now, and that's the biggest thing. They've talked to Aaron Glenn, so they know at least what idea he has of some names he would bring in as offensive coordinator. They've talked to Ben Johnson, so they at least know some names of guys he would at least be willing to work with as a defensive coordinator. So those things, the Bears already know a lot more about that than any one of us does. And I'm still at the theory here that we're early in the process. I see a lot of people saying,
no question,
this guy's the favorite, or the Bears are already going to narrow it down. Shut up. No, that's just false.
I saw an article. Somebody said it's a 2-man race.
I saw that today. I was like,
Johnson and McCarthy. I go, okay. And I guess then why are they even going to talk to Monken and Brady this weekend?
Yeah. It's like they're interviewing 2 other guys this week. Yeah, no, stop it. It's just ridiculous.
And Monken can come in. Monken's been a head coach now, be it college, but he was another guy like David Shaw. He coached at a really shitty program, and he got him to a bowl game. That's Southern Miss. Southern Miss, tough place to win.
It is. That's a tough. I saw a lot of people commenting about how Mike McCarthy stayed the night in Chicago as well, and I was like, look, guys, Mike McCarthy's a little bit older. He's a bigger guy. He came to Chicago for an interview. Just because he stayed the night doesn't mean he was talking to the Bears all night. The guy might have wanted to try.
You know, I did that. He went out to dinner. They did go out to dinner. I know that.
Yeah, see, he wanted some Portillo's and some Chicago dogs the next day before he went home. You know,
no, because when I did that show with Pat and McKee the other day, Jason even knew where they were going. He goes, "Why don't I pick you up and we'll go get a table next to theirs?" You know,
just eavesdrop on him. Yeah. Oh man. Greg, always, man, it's a pleasure talking to you. Chat, everybody who tuned in, we appreciate you guys. Hit the like button. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully we have a head coach by then, but I don't think
so. But it's I think my Super Bowl favorites right now are Detroit and Buffalo. But Buffalo, if Buffalo wins this game this week against Baltimore, even if they got to go to Kansas City, they're going to beat Kansas City. So but this, to me, the AFC Championship game is this weekend. Buffalo.
I did Baltimore. Have one more question before we go here, because this is my thing. Okay. For all the people in the chat that really want Ben Johnson, because as I talk to the more people I talk to, that seems to be the name that is the favorite with Bears fans. If they want Ben Johnson, should they root for the Lions to not go to the Super Bowl? Do you think that improves our odds of getting him?
No, I want him to go to the Super Bowl. To me, that makes it even better.
See, and this is a question because we've never, as far in the last 25 years, we've never hired a coach that his team went to the Super Bowl that year. And that was my question I was going to ask you. I ran it by you on Twitter. Is back when you guys hired Lovie Smith, because you were in the room. They lost in the divisional round that year. Now you got to probably kind of switch it up in your head here, because if they would have kept winning, and that's another 3 to 4 weeks or a month that Lovie wouldn't have been available. Do you guys
we still would have hired?
You already were that far along.
We were trying to hire Saban, and that fell through.
Okay, man, Nick Saban would have been insane. We got to have a story about that one day.
Well, I mean, I've told the story 1,000 times, but you know what? Looking back, it was a blessing. 2 years later, Nick went to Miami and he failed. He
did. But that doesn't mean he would have necessarily.
Here's what the problem. Tell you what the problem was. It wasn't money. People want to say, "Oh, it was money." Ted Phillips wouldn't pay him. No, we had an agreement on money. It got down to now. Nick and Jerry go back to when they were rookie college coaches on the Syracuse staff, and so they're really, had a friendship that goes back into the late 70s, and he, we went out to the East-West game. Jerry interviewed 3 guys out there. Nobody knows that, but we did it, and 2 of them I can mention. Pat Hill was the head coach at Fresno, who actually coached with Saban under Belichick in Cleveland.
Okay.
And then the other guy was, I can't think of his name now, was the Cal coach who coached Aaron Rodgers. And both were good interviews. Pat was a long shot, no question. He leaves the East-West and he flies to Baton Rouge. And he didn't stay at a hotel. He stayed at Nick's house. And he was at Nick's house for 2 days. Okay. Then he comes up here and they start negotiating the contract. And then the final sticking point was, who's going to have control of the 53? Jerry had control of the 53. He wasn't giving it up.
Saban wanted it.
He wasn't giving it up. And that's why Nick didn't come. Nick got control of the 53 in Miami, and he didn't know what to do with it. He figured out, wait a minute, I can do all this stuff, but I still don't have control because you got more control of who comes and goes in college than you do in the NFL. And, because of salary cap and guys are free agents and all that type of thing. Finally, he said, screw it, I'm going back to college.
Yep. He did.
But what he did though is first, I remember we laughed about it, and I can't think of the guy's name. There was a linebacker he took at the top of the second round. I don't know if it was the first draft or the second draft. And we had our medical meetings, and we totally flunked the guy. And during the medical meetings, came up, and Jerry asked the orthopedic, he goes, how long can he play? And the doctor goes, what round does he go? This is exactly how the conversation.
Channing Crowder? Was it Crowder?
Yep.
I know.
Jerry goes, second round, maybe goes in the first if he works out good, talent wise, not. Yeah. Doctor says, I give him 3 years. That's all he'll play. Go look. How long did he play in the league? How many games did he miss?
He played 6 years and never once played a full season.
That's right. He had a really bad arthritic knee in college.
74 career starts. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So, and that's why we flunked him. But see, Nick was like, I like the talent. I'll overrule the doctor.
Got you in trouble there, Nick, because in college you can do that because you only got guys a couple years and they move on. In the NFL, it's a big investment when you're taking a guy in the second.
I remember our doctor said he's going to miss practices because the arthritis is going to keep getting worse. It's everything they said was correct.
Yeah, 100%. DJ Profit, the last comment, he says he got $5 that says we go after Joe Brady. Ben Johnson seems destined for Vegas. He just wants a leader of men. Give him a clone of Dan Campbell and he's happy. Give me
I don't know if Joe Brady's a clone of Dan Campbell.
Definitely not. I think Joe Brady's a guy. I just like him. There's something about Joe Brady I've always liked him.
I'm a little bit scared. He's real young.
He's real young and he's never done it. That's why I don't think he gets the job. And that's why it's like, dang, because it's a guy who I think it could be a really good coach, but I think he's just
he might be 2 years away. He might be Johnson 2 years from now. But you know what? He's going to get a head job before then. But
I don't know if you heard, I love this, but they asked Josh Allen about him, and Josh Allen goes, they go, what did Joe Brady do for the Bills offense? He goes, nothing. No, that guy sucks. Don't interview him. You don't want him as a head coach. No, I'm just kidding. He's awesome. But yeah, I love that answer, and I think it's great. I do love Joe Brady. He's definitely my dark horse candidate or my sleeper guy that I'd be happy with Joe Brady. But like you, I am a bit worried. I think he might be a year or two away, and that's why I don't think he's the guy who ends up getting the job.
Well, we can sit here and flap our jaws for hours and on end, and we're going to find out a lot more next week when they ask to talk to ABC a second time. Now, in saying that, do they have to talk to McCarthy a second time? They already had him in the building. The Zoom interviews are 3-hour time limit.
Yep.
McCarthy was here between dinner and everything else a good 8 hours.
Yeah. And they already know more about McCarthy as well. He's not unproven like a lot of these guys.
It gets with him, it's like, does Poles see himself working with him? And it works for McCarthy too. Does McCarthy see himself working with Poles?
Yep.
Can we have a marriage here?
Yep. And then this is I did want to address this real quick about Todd Monken. A lot of comments about how great Lamar Jackson has played, and they're saying it's a lot of credit is going to Todd Monken. I just have to, my biggest worry with that is how much of that is Lamar Jackson saying, I don't care what the play call is. When you see a lot of his special things, it's Lamar Jackson working off script? How much of that is
There's no
the
question.
play caller? How much of that
Don't
is
don't
Lamar
forget
just
though,
being special?
he won 2 national championships at Georgia with 2 different quarterbacks.
Yep, true. It's a great point.
And those were highly rated offenses in the SEC. So
Love
I mean, the guy's on a run now. 2 years in a row, he's a national championship, and then 2 years in a row, he goes to the playoffs in the NFL. He's on a pretty good run.
He's hot. Yeah, Todd Monken's hot, and that's why he's on my short list as well. I love it, Greg. Appreciate all the comments, man. I always love chatting it up with you. We'll be back in 2 weeks, guys. Any final comments, Greg?
No, we'll just let's see what happens next week with second interviews. That'll tell us a lot.
Second interviews will tell a lot. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Bear down, guys.
See you later.